All right, welcome back to the Hippie Moms podcast, my friends. I'm so excited to introduce Brent Michael Phillips for this podcast. Welcome, Brent. Thanks for being with us.
Excited to be here. This is great.
So excited to have you. So we all wanted, we kind of know a little bit about you, but will you tell us your story? How did you get to be where you are today?
Well, it's funny that I never thought I'd do anything like this. Oh my gosh. It seems almost totally crazy because growing up, I was pretty much your typical computer nerd. I'm sure a lot of the hippie moms listening got sons, daughters that are like that.
Yeah.
I loved video games, Star Wars, Star Trek, Dungeons and Dragons, King Arthur, all that stuff. And it was funny that when I was little, I saw magic as just something that happened in imaginary places or maybe the distant past. I wanted magic to be real, but I really saw no evidence for it. So you read the Bible, there's all these great miracles, right? You read about King Arthur and Merlin, and I love the magical aspect. But then I had to get serious about my life. And when it came time to figure out what I wanted to do, it was pretty easy call because the one thing I was really good at that I could get paid for was programming computers. So in college, I ended up at MIT, which was enormously transformative, largely just because of a coincidence of timing. That when I got to MIT, it was still the 80s. No one had heard of the internet. But MIT had the internet on campus for every single student because they really saw this as the wave of the future. And so I fell in love with the early internet. For those that don't know, it was so much better then. There was no spam. There was no trolls. It was just people sharing. And I loved it. And so I went on to grad school and ended up as part of what was called the World Wide Web Consortium, which was the group that really developed the software and specifications that ran the whole modern internet. So it was really exciting. In 1994, me and two guys in my lab, we sent the first ever synchronized audio video stream live over the web. So we're doing some really cool stuff. And when the internet boom started right after that, I was like, hey, this is my gold rush. So I figured, okay, I'm going to drop out of MIT. I dropped out of the PhD program, to be precise. I already had my bachelor's and my master's. So I'm like, screw the PhD. I'm going to move to California, recruit my buddy, and we're going to start a website company, and we're going to make millions of dollars. So that was my plan. And it got off to a good start. I've recruited my lifelong best friend and another partner, and we started a website company. And it's crazy. Did you know the very first website I ever built in my whole life, other than like Brent's homepage, right? My first real website was for the launch of the Sony PlayStation.
What?
Isn't that cool?
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, because back in the 90s, early 90s, you could have a couple 22-year-olds walk into some advertising agency and walk out with a big contract because no one knew anything about this whole new world.
Oh, wow.
So long story short, things were great the first year. A year later, I had 15 people working for me. We were making money. We had several Fortune 500 clients. I did the website for Disneyland. I did the first website for Nissan Motors. We did several divisions of Sony. We even started a second company to make online games.
Wow.
I had developed this real-time networking technology that allowed a completely new kind of game that had never existed before. Today, we call them MOGs, or massively multiplayer online games.
Okay.
And I'm sure some of the hippie moms listening are going to line up outside my house and beat me with a stick. Because they ruin a lot of lives now. But and I thought we can create this new game. And so long story short, the physical strain of working 100-hour work weeks, my body couldn't handle it. So I had a massive health crisis, chronic pain. And long story short, I ended up living with my parents because I was in so much pain. I needed help with basic life stuff. And I spent 3 years in conventional physical therapy. But I didn't get better, I got worse. And it all came to the head in 1998 when I finally got in to see the head doctor at the Curl and Joe Clinic, which is one of the top physical therapy clinics in the world. It's where they pioneered the Tommy John surgery and all this stuff. And I was so excited. I was like, finally, I'm going to find the guy who knows how to fix me, right? I was counting the days. I was putting checks on my calendar like before my driver's license or something, right? I was so excited. And I got in to see him, and he was kind of this stately Southern older gentleman. And honestly, I don't remember his name, but I remember what he said to me. He looked at my files, he asked me a couple questions, and he just closed everything up. And he was like, "Well, I'm sorry, son. There's nothing I and a doctor can do. You're never going to be out of pain. You're never going to be able to work again. And I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to recommend you for lifetime disability." And I was stunned. I didn't expect that.
What?
And the last thing he said to me before I left the office, I'll never forget. He asked me, he goes, "Son, was there someone that can take care of you until you die?" And at the time, I was 27 years old.
Oh my gosh,
Yep.
Brent, that's heartbreaking.
So I was recommended for lifetime disability at 27, which is very rare.
Yeah.
Usually when that happens, you're missing multiple limbs. You have really severe burns or trauma, or you're in a wheelchair or something like that. So that's how bad it was. And I went to tell my best friend and business partner, and I figured he'd be all, "Hey, Brent, I got your back. We'll get through it together." Because we had been close like brothers. In fact, a lot of people thought we were gay because we were so close.
Yeah.
My girlfriends were jealous of my relationship with him. We were that close. And what I found out was he had been secretly dating the woman I was crazy in love with. And he was just like, "Well, if you can't work anymore, you have no place here." And he had played games with the contracts with the company and basically stolen the equity from me and fired me from my job, stole the website company and the video game company. And there were lawsuits and lots of bad feelings. But long story short, that was my first dark night of the soul. And I was broke, living with my parents, living with terrible chronic pain. I've been recommended for lifetime disability and been told by one of the best doctors, there's no chance of recovery. And
Wow.
And so I had lost my career that I spent my whole life training for. That spent an ungodly amount of money going to MIT for essentially nothing. And on top of that, I had also lost my lifelong best friend and the woman I was crazy in love with. Though I'm kind of like, screw her. She was, double timing me. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah. In retrospect, no big loss, but at the time, it really hurt.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Right? I was a young person in love, right? We all know what that's like.
Yeah.
At least I would hope, right? Bunch of moms. You were in love at some point, right? Yeah. So long story short, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I was using drugs. I was day drinking, all the things you're not supposed to do. I had a friend of mine get me into positive thinking. And it didn't fix any of my problems, though it did pull me out of the gutter. At least I wasn't getting drunk by 10 a.m. every day.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah. But that didn't help me at all. So after 6 months, I kind of gave up on that. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to drink and use drugs till I die. And after that, I got someone that turned me on to alternative medicine. And of course, nowadays it's much more mainstream. Yeah. But back in the 90s, it was still pretty fringe.
Yeah.
And so long story short, I spent the next 5 years on a journey of alternative medicine. And I was doing everything. I went to Chinese doctors, acupuncture, the cups, the herbs. I did cleanses. I did special diets. I started doing yoga and Pilates. I got ergonomic training. I went to osteopaths, chiropractors, homeopaths. I could go on and on. I did so many things. It was nuts. But here's what's crazy. I was not getting better. I was getting worse. And it didn't make any sense. And really all that happened over time was my credit card debt was going up and up and up. So it all came to a head in 2003. I agreed to have an experimental surgery that a doctor had developed that they thought could help me. And long story short, I woke up after the surgery and my right arm was paralyzed. I couldn't move it at all. And that was kind of rock bottom in a sense.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that during these 5 years, I had met someone, I got married. But after this, when my arm froze, she left me. And so I'm there, and my parents had divorced, so I no longer could live with them. They were both living with friends. And it was scary because my disability payment wouldn't even cover my rent. And I was almost out of debt. And I couldn't move my arm. And I had now, no wife to help me with the bills. And it was really a hard time. And that lasted, what, about 5 months. And I met this crazy healer lady named Terry.
Harry?
Terry, yeah. And I got talked into it by my Aunt Lauren, who was one of her friends. And so I went to have a session with Terry. And honestly, I didn't expect anything to happen because I'd done some Reiki healing, some pranic healing, some, other kind of hands-on and kind of the lightweight alternative stuff for years. And she talked to me about the power of the subconscious and how we have these deep subconscious blocks and traumas. And it all made sense. And she asked me a lot of questions about my childhood and what had happened with my friend and my companies and, the women in my life, my divorce. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But the whole time I'm like, hey, lady, this is cool, but I'm not here to talk about my feelings. I could care less about that. I'm here because I'm in pain and I can't move my arm. And at that time, all I wanted was to heal my body so I could go back to tech. That's what I was there for. And I remember she worked on me for about an hour. And at the end of the session, she said, okay, dear, we're gonna take care of your arm now. And I'm like, yeah, right. You and what army, right? And she kind of closed her eyes and went into a trance. And I'm just sitting there looking out the window. We got a little bored. I'm like, okay, this is cool, whatever. And it was the craziest thing. There was this loud pop in my elbow. It went crack. It was similar to the cracks and pops we all get with age, but like times 10. It was like kaboom, like a little firecracker went off. And it must have been loud because Terry opened her eyes and turned her head. And she smiled. She's like, try your arm. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, oh my God. It was, I don't think I've ever been so astonished or amazed in my life.
Wow.
That in that moment, I could move my arm again. And so that was the instant that this very skeptical, rational, geeky engineer became someone who devoted their life to energy healing, to consciousness work.
That was the
And
moment.
so, yep, that was when it really all changed. Now,
that's when you saw the magic. You experienced it and you had your own evidence and you're
that's
like,
right.
what?
Yeah. I'm like, wow, magic is real. Who would have thought? Yeah. Who would have thought?
But you don't know until you really have that evidence.
Of course.
Yeah.
Again, my background, very methodical, rational, scientific, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
And here was this experience that could not be explained away.
Yeah, wow.
So that led me to the new career. But I want to be honest with everyone, because I think there's a lot of people in this world that exaggerate and over promote, and it's full of hype and nonsense. So I want to cut through that. I want to be completely honest. The honest thing is my frozen arm instantly healed, never gave me a problem again. But it was not like all my problems got solved in an hour. I was still depressed. I still had chronic pain all over my body. I was still in debt. I was still very much, let's just say I wasn't the biggest prize in terms of what women were chasing down the street, right? After my wife left me and I couldn't move my arm, I had gained a lot of weight. I was out of shape. I was miserable. I had social anxiety. I mean, I could go on and on, right? I was still a train wreck.
Yeah.
But I was a train wreck who could move his arm.
Okay. Well, that's progress. Okay.
Yeah. And so, but I was able, here's what's crazy. I'd been in therapy at that time for almost 8 years. And nothing had helped me. I just got worse and worse and worse. But when I started to do the energy work, I started to see slow improvement. And so, yes, I still went to physical therapists and yoga and doctors and did cleanses. That didn't stop. But I started to slowly get better. And the only thing that changed was doing the energy work. So
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What do you mean by started doing the energy work?
Yes, so it's a great thing. As you should know by now, you can tell I'm a geek, right? I sound like a geek. I look like a geek. I dress like a geek.
It really
of course. And I learned, I'm too old to worry about those things anymore, right?
Just
it's like you. Right, all the old people walking around naked at the Y. Why do they do it? They just don't care.
They don't care.
They just don't care.
To be.
Right? Yeah, they're just living in their body. Whatever you think of mine, I don't care, right?
Matter.
Yeah, so I think of energy work as technology. And I think it really is. And I like to group all the energy, consciousness, positive thinking work I see it as 3 generations of technology.
Okay.
In that we might look at telephones. First, we had landlines with rotary dials, right?
Yeah.
Then we got our flip phones, right, in the 90s and 2000s, and now everyone has a smartphone. Kind of 3 generations. Okay. The consciousness I found is the same. That I've read thousands of books. I've taught about 200 weekend seminars, taken at least 100. Worked with all these coaches and healers, gurus, mystics, amazing people. And what I found is we can group into the three groups. The first group we call the first generation. That's kind of your old school positive thinking. Nowadays, we call it the law of attraction from The Secret, but it's that stuff, right? Mantras, visualizations, vision boards, masterminds, focus on the positive. Now, I think it's worth doing, but it's interesting. There was a university in Canada, I think it was Ottawa, that did a formal research study on the law of attraction. What they found was over 99% of the people felt they got few or no results at all from it. So that's bad. And that was my experience too.
Yeah.
It didn't make me money. It didn't heal my body. It just kept me from getting drunk in the morning. And maybe it helped me to not kill myself. So to be fair, it wasn't nothing. It's just, it didn't give me what I was looking for.
Sure.
And that was my experience. So then we get into the second generation. That's where things get really interesting. So the big distinguisher is this. With the second generation technology, we have a way to directly work with the subconscious mind. That's the difference.
Yes.
So there's many different modalities that work on this basis. The emotion code is a popular one. The healing codes, almost the same thing, very similar. The healing codes, EFT, Psych K, Theta healing. We could go on and on. Okay. There's dozens, maybe hundreds of modalities that kind of work in the idea that there's subconscious blocks. We want to find them and work with them.
Right.
Hypnosis, NLP, etc.
Okay.
And so what happens is with the second generation, we start to see medical miracles. You start to see people healing from cancer, or their arm is paralyzed by a surgery, and boom, in an instant it heals. You see, allergies, broken bones, back pain, whatever. You start to see a decent chunk of medical miracles. So there's a lot of things it's very good for, especially physical health. So I think it's worth learning and applying, if not just for physical health. It's great.
Right. Okay.
But in the first gen, we're looking at a less than 1% success rate. With the second gen, depending on the person and the issue, and I'd say anywhere from 10 to 40%.
Okay, better.
That maybe 1 in 10 of my clients has a session and experiences a genuine miracle.
Okay.
Where, it's again, something that's big and obvious, right? Yesterday I had cancer, now I don't.
Right, that's big.
Yeah, it's big, but it's not 100%.
Right.
And there's a lot of issues that the second gen techs can't work with. Because it's very much focused on language. And so it has to be done through the mind. So again, good for some things, but not good for others. Okay. I found for the most part, it's not really good for making money, for building confidence, or for generating presence, charisma, getting in the body, all those things. Okay. Those are not mental things. The mind actually gets in the way. And what I learned from Terry was a more advanced version of the second gen tech. Okay. So you talk to people, you use muscle testing, you find blocks and traumas, you clear them, you reprogram.
Okay. That's where I'm at. I'm in the second gen. But
and again, that's great stuff. I still teach it and use it myself.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen miracles myself in that. So
I would expect so.
Yeah. It's really amazing. But I'm really excited for the next generation.
It's like driving around town. You're going to see a gas station.
Yeah.
Right? You use the second gen techs, you will see miracles. We don't know when or where.
Yeah.
But I've seen almost 2,000 miracles in 20 years. I'll have to check my miracle count. I think I'm about 1,930 or so. Are
you going to write a book about them?
I've written several.
Oh, good.
Yes, I've written several.
Well, and I know the latest one, but okay, continue.
Yeah, I've written several. So then here's what happened with me. That after I worked with Terry, I learned the second gen techs. Again, it was great. It helped me get off disability. I got back to work now as a healer instead of a coder. I started dating again. My pain reduced, didn't go away, but it reduced enough. I could start going to the gym, doing some basic things again. So it was great. But I very quickly got stuck.
Mm.
That it's crazy that the way the subconscious works, it was a crazy coincidence that the money I made when I started working full-time as a healer was identical to the penny to my last salary as an engineer in the 90s.
That's weird.
Isn't that weird?
Good
That
weird.
wasn't intentional, it's just the way it fell out.
Wow.
And so a few years later, I was doing better. I'd had a few girlfriends. I was able to support myself. I was off disability. I had paid off about half my debt, which was great, right?
Amazing.
When you're 50 grand in debt, 25 feels great.
Yeah.
Right. So
Definitely.
I was getting at it, but I was still miserable. And I was doing okay, but I was still struggling. And then my life fell apart again. We won't get into the drama, but I fell deeply in love with this woman and suffered the absolute worst heartbreak of my life. I mean, I was so crazy about her. You know, Bard should write songs about it. And at the same time, I had also unknowingly, one of my students had connected me with his great financial advisor. Turns out the guy was a criminal.
Oh.
And robbed us both blind, in addition to 300 other people.
What?
Yep, it was a big financial scam. Fortunately, the Justice Department, the FBI caught him, and he will likely die in prison. But he stole over $50 million from 350 people. And long story short, not only had he stolen all of my money, they had also used forged signatures and things to refinance my home in a neg-am mortgage and take out all the equity.
Oh my goodness, Brent.
So, yes. So not only had lost all my savings, I had lost all my savings. He had looted my retirement accounts and had also taken so much equity out of my home with multiple mortgages that I was about $1 million in debt. And, you know, being a regular middle-class person, I had no ability to fight that in the courts, right? So I had no choice but to go bankrupt.
Wow.
And that was another dark night of the soul. This horrific heartbreak and bankruptcy. I really thought my life was over. But the way it happened was, it was 2008. On November 10th, I declared bankruptcy and figured my life is over. Because I had always figured I'd be retired as a multimillionaire by 30.
Right.
And you know what? A guy from my high school who also went to MIT did exactly that. He went and got a job on Wall Street, wrote some code, made $20 million in the first couple of years, and retired and just literally moved to Ibiza, the party island off Spain. Bought a big yacht, and as far as I know, he spent his whole life just having fun.
Wow.
That was my plan, right? I didn't expect I'd be bankrupt right before I turned 40. And but so November 10th, I went bankrupt. November 11th, I met Carl Wolf. And this wasn't never the plan. It just turned out I ended up being the one to carry on his work.
Oh.
And now I consider him my mentor. And my life coach, Brian, had introduced me to him because I had worked with Brian. I had done 110 hours. And Brian didn't know what to do with me. I was so screwed up, right? And his focus was dating. But he's like, Brent, you're tall, you're not terrible looking, you have a job, you love animals, you own property, and you're looking for a serious relationship. Why is it impossible for you to find a girlfriend? He didn't understand it. And so he kicked me up after a year and a half of working with Brian. He's like, dude, I don't know what to do with you. So he introduced me to the master, which was Carl. And Brian convinced me to spend my last $500 doing a healing session with Carl. And I did it. You know, I'm willing to take that risk. And so here's what happened. I showed up, we met down by Venice Beach. He had me rent rollerblades, put them on, and he videotaped me as I skated in circles in the parking lot. Then we sat in his car and watched the tape. And what it felt like to me was he just ripped me a new one. It was all this criticism. And I went home upset because I was like, dude, I already know my life is a mess. I don't need someone to tell me that. I certainly don't need to pay some crazy old guy $500 to tell me my life is a mess, right?
Yeah.
I can do that at home for free.
Okay.
And so I went home, I yelled at Brian. I'm like, shoot his ass. I'm like, dude, what the heck is wrong with you? You know I'm bankrupt. You know this was the last money I had, and you had me give it to some coot who had me rollerblade. What the hell?
What is that?
Right? It just seemed nuts. And here's the thing that got me. He didn't do anything to fix me. He didn't do a healing. He didn't smudge me. He didn't smack me on the forehead. He didn't give me a cleanse. He didn't do anything, right? He just watched my movement, criticized me a lot, and sent me home. I was like, God damn it, right? And I remember Brian he was like, Brent, relax. I totally understand where you're coming from. He said, do me a favor, give me 3 weeks. Call me back in 3 weeks. And if really you felt you got nothing out of it, 1, I will sit and listen, yell at me as long as you want. And 2, I'll try to make it up to you. And I'll give you more coaching, or we'll figure it out. And I was like, okay, fine, 3 weeks. So I'm like, okay, 3 weeks, call Brian, yell at him, right? And so it didn't take 3 weeks, it was less than 3 days. So I had my first session with Carl on Tuesday. By Thursday night, I had made over $50,000.
Wow.
And it was crazy. I had never had success like that in my business before then.
Wow.
And I remember I called Brian. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. This guy, Carl, I have no idea what he did, but there is magic there.
What did he do?
Well, what he did was he introduced me to the 3rd generation technology.
Okay. Okay.
And that's what the new book, Movement Feedback Holography, is all about.
Okay.
That before we get into it, I just want to warn everyone, it's weird.
Okay. Go weird.
Which you guys love, right?
We're open to weird. Yes.
It's totally weird.
Because normal doesn't work.
That's
Normal
right. It doesn't look like any other form of healing you've done before.
Okay, cool.
There's no muscle testing. There's no tapping. None of that. It's simply physical movement and doing basically an intuitive reading of the movement.
Oh, wow.
And that's it.
Okay.
And it was the 3rd generation technology, what we call movement feedback holography, is this process of getting past the language and the mind, working directly with the body, which was exactly what I needed.
Okay.
Because I was a master of the mental game.
Right.
I mean, I didn't just go to MIT, I crushed MIT. I had a perfect 5.0 GPA in the most difficult major. And I won a bunch of awards and honors and things. You know, I don't want to spend time on it because unless you went there, it wouldn't mean anything. Right? It'd be like explaining baseball MVP to someone who's never seen sports.
Right.
Just words, right?
Yeah.
But I used to be, let me just put it this way. I used to be really smart.
Okay.
A long time ago, I was brilliant. Now, 20 years since, I focused on wisdom now.
That's
Intelligence ruined my life. Wisdom is
analyzing. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what it's about is getting into the body. And so that there is a meditative component too.
Okay.
We'll just kind of back burner that for now because I don't want to get too confusing. But yes, there's a meditative aspect to it.
Okay, cool.
And that takes a little longer to learn. But what it involves is, first, we call it movement feedback holography. Because first it involves physical movement. You rollerblade, you walk on a tightrope, you shake your hands, you do roll-ups. There's all sorts of different movements we can use. It doesn't really matter. The reason being that we're constantly broadcasting all of our sort of learned behaviors and energy patterns through how we move our body. And women know this almost entirely intuitively.
Yeah. When
some guy comes to talk to you at the bar, you already have a great sense of him before he opens his mouth, don't you?
Absolutely.
Of course you do, right? That's what it is. But as a man and an engineer, I was clueless.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you do movement and you get feedback from a trained facilitator that knows how to read the energy patterns. And this is where it gets weird because it's a completely intuitive aspect. There's no dictionary. There's no step-by-step process. It just has to be felt and done.
Okay.
So if you're able to read the intuitive, the patterns, you can tell someone exactly what's going on in their life.
Wow.
And it's crazy. I remember Carl was telling me things. I'm like, how in the world could you know that? He could read me like a book.
Wow.
And the last word is holography. It is a holographic process.
Mhm.
And so I will take a minute to explain that, but just know you don't need to understand this to do it and get benefits.
Okay.
This is for those that like to understand things.
Yeah.
That humans, we are holographic creatures. And what is a hologram? Well, if we look at your traditional laser hologram, it's basically this flat two-dimensional image you run a laser through, and it creates this three-dimensional shape.
Mhm.
That's a hologram. Here's what's crazy about a laser hologram. Let's say that we have a hologram of a car, just to pick something random, right? If you were to take a picture of a car out of a magazine and cut it in half, you'd have one side that's the left side of the car and the other that's the right side. A hologram doesn't work that way. If you were to take the hologram and cut it in half, what you would get is two pictures of the car, the entire car in lower resolution.
Oh.
That's how a hologram works. And according to the latest science, our whole universe is a big hologram.
Right.
You might have heard about the holographic universe.
Mhm.
It's a great book series on PBS, great stuff.
Okay.
So the connection here is that what Carl used to teach was how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mhm.
That's the basis. Why
Mhm.
is that? You bring the same you to everything you do.
Yes.
So holographically, every movement you make contains all your beliefs and behaviors, just in lower resolution. It's
Oh.
not too different, very similar if you've ever done iridology or live blood cell analysis.
Mhm.
An iridologist will look in the iris of your eye and can tell you a lot about the health of your entire body by looking at your eye. That's another example of holography.
Hmm.
Almost everything you need to know about your health and your body is there, if you know how to read it. Live blood cell analysis is similar. They'll prick your finger, put a drop of blood under a microscope, and by looking at just one drop of blood, they can tell you a lot about what's going on with your whole body.
Mhm.
So it's that kind of principle.
Okay. I'm
So
getting it. Okay.
that's why I say it doesn't really matter what movement you do.
Right.
And honestly, the movement's just a magnifying glass. The
Mm.
movement makes the energy bigger.
Mm.
Carl was so good, and I can do this now sometimes. Oh, you can learn to read energy without the movement. It's just harder.
Okay.
The movement makes it really easy and visible.
Wow.
Right. It'd be like, anyone over 50 knows you buy like a supplement bottle and it's got this tiny little writing. It's like, how could anybody read this? Right.
Yes.
So you look at it through a magnifying glass. It's not changing what's written there. It just makes it easier to read.
Mm.
That's what the movement is for.
Okay.
It magnifies it, makes it easy to see. Oh, now I can read the instructions. Right.
Right.
And what's crazy is there's no fixing process needed because none of us is broken.
I love that.
Right.
Yes.
The
Yes.
trouble with the first and second gen techs is they kind of approach it from the start as we're broken and need to be fixed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have this block, we have to get rid of it. I have this trauma, we have to get rid of it. Does that make sense?
Completely.
With the third gen work, what I learned from Carl is we're all perfect as we are.
Mm,
Let's just let's just evolve into something even better.
I love that.
So it's evolutionary. It's
Mm,
just what's the next natural step. And it's a more gentle process because there's no forcing or making things happen.
okay, so I have a question. So let's
Yeah.
so Carl's watching you rollerblade.
Yep.
Then he tells you he's criticizing you, it sounds like.
Yes. You're in
And
your head. You can't feel your feet. There's nothing behind stuff like that, right?
okay. And so with that, did that bring it into the subconscious, that conversation?
Yeah.
Or what was that?
Yes. Yeah.
What?
It's there's a long answer. I'll
Okay.
do my best to give a short answer.
Okay.
That is it working the subconscious? Yes, absolutely. But it works at a little higher level than the second gen.
Okay.
The way I would describe it is that the second gens are very powerful, but they can only work on one line of code at a time.
Mm,
So you find a belief, you tap it, it clears.
right.
So it's effective, but it can be slow.
Yes. Yes.
The movement works on whole routines. It's a higher level.
Okay.
So it is weirder. It's harder to learn. There is a steep learning curve.
Okay.
Like anybody can go learn EFT in 2 hours for free.
Right.
And I think it's great. It's a great place to start.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of things EFT can't do.
Mm,
It'd be like a car. Almost anybody can learn to drive a passenger car and get a license.
right.
But not everyone has what it takes to be an Indy 500 driver.
Right.
That
Okay.
takes years of special training to be able to handle that car.
Got
Most
it.
of us would just burn up the clutch and stall it.
Right.
Right? You put an average person in the Indy car, they're going to blow the clutch and you don't even move an inch.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
takes, so the movement is a more difficult skill. It takes longer to learn, but it is a lot more powerful.
Okay.
Right? Your Taurus is not going to compete with my Indy car on the track, right?
Right.
It's way too slow.
I
So
guess I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around what energetically did he do? Or
yeah, that's where the meditative part comes in.
okay.
That there is an entrainment meditation that goes with it.
Got it.
That a lot of the time we don't talk about it, you just do it. Now, those that do the trainings, I explain it, walk you through it.
Okay.
Carl wasn't a big explainer. He'd just show up and do his thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And what happens is, what it comes down to is, can you accept the feedback?
Yeah.
That is the most important thing. That many people go into defending and justifying their behaviors.
Ooh, yes.
They go, well, you look like you're low energy. Well, that's not my fault. I'm working 2 jobs. That's a defensive justification.
Yes.
To look at it and go, yeah, you're right. I do look tired. That's taking it in.
Okay.
So it's a subtle difference.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I almost had to meet Carl after I went bankrupt. Had I met him when I was more functional, I would have resisted and argued and defended.
You were at the point where you had nowhere to go.
I was so desperate and so open and so broken, I felt. I was willing to accept or try almost anything.
And that's where like some of the biggest spiritual, like mind-blowing things happen, is when you're in that, where egos, you don't got anything anymore.
That's right. And so what it comes down to is, we must reduce the ego.
Yeah.
And if you can't do it on your own, life will kick your ass and crush you down for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was simply being in the meditative entrainment. It's a synchronized alpha to theta state, for those that are curious about the details. We call it quantum field entrainment. Along with the movement and the feedback, when you're able to take in and see what's happening in your life, your subconscious automatically cleans itself. You'll just drop entire mythologies.
So if I was to get, which I wish I read your book before this podcast, but I'd like to maybe do another podcast after I read your book.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
Will I learn more about this? And can I learn to do it on myself, or do
Absolutely.
I?
Yes. Now, again, there is a learning curve.
Of course, yes.
So if you wanted to learn EFT or a second gen technique, I'd say 3-4 hours of training, maybe a day or 2, go crazy. There is a longer learning curve here.
Okay.
But I do have a series of trainings specifically designed to build that ability.
Cool.
But coming out of the gate, almost nobody can do it on themselves right away.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I do teach things that you can start doing right away.
Okay.
Right. I try to mix the second and third gens. The second gen is great. It's much easier to learn and faster to apply.
Is there something that you can teach us, one little thing, or is it just integrated to?
To do the movement is a little tricky.
Okay.
What I can absolutely do is talk a little about more the thinking aspect of it.
Okay.
And for anyone that's interested, I will be demonstrating the movement and doing an entrainment meditation with you on my upcoming Heal-a-thon.
Yes.
So we can talk about that before the end, for sure.
Let's make sure we talk.
That's really the better venue, because I have more time and I can interact with people a little more.
Okay.
Because what I want everyone to take away is, don't believe any of this just as I said it.
Right.
Take what you hear as a possibility.
Yeah.
Then have your own experience before you judge it.
Yeah. We all need to have our own evidence.
Right.
But we have to be open to receive the evidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I'll say, hey, I'm not for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm intense. I'm fast paced. I have almost no tolerance for BS or new age nonsense. I'm all about what works and the truth.
Okay.
A little obsessive.
I like that. That's
so,
good.
but if that's you, you'll love me.
Okay.
What I don't do is, I'm not going to sit around and give you a hug and tell you it's okay when it's not. I'm going to say what you're doing wrong and what has to shift.
Right.
So if you're just looking for a big hug and a shoulder to cry on, don't come to Brent.
Okay. Okay.
I've had a few of those people. They go away. They don't like me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is what's wrong. This is what you need to do. This, and this.
Yeah.
It is oddly, it's a more masculine approach to a very feminine subject.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Okay, we're just
because being a professional energy healer, that's about as feminine as it gets, right? Other than maybe mom, right?
Yeah.
Something men just can't do.
Yeah.
So, but yes, very masculine. And so what I would say is that that there is a study aspect to the third gen too. What's in the East, they call it Advaita Vedanta or non-duality in the West.
Mhm.
And so it's coming down to this is the bit I want to give everyone a question to ask.
Okay.
And some people have ridden this one question all the way to enlightenment.
Mhm.
And it's this: if we look at your typical positive thinking material, and I've seen lots of them, I'm sure you have too. They'll say, oh, you're a powerful being and you can have life be the way you want. And you have this great spiritual power and you don't have to struggle. You just have to, blah, 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 right? I want to stop and ask, okay, that's great. I'm not arguing that. I think all of that is true. But what exactly is this you?
Mm.
That's the thing I encourage everyone to start thinking about. Most of us spend our whole lives assuming we know what we are.
Mm.
But most of us are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
For most of us, what we think we are is somewhere between the ego and the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So we think we're the ego. We think we're the mind, the body, the spirit. That's not actually you. So most people think they are some kind of being.
Mm.
I'm a man, I'm a woman, or something in the middle. I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm an engineer, I'm a teacher. None of that's true. Those are all descriptions of the ego, of the character you are witnessing having a human experience, but they're not you. That I remember we won't get too much more into awakening now, but it is a big part of, we'll talk about a little more at the upcoming Healathon. My moment of awakening it was like a lightning bolt shot through my body. And I was like, oh my God, I get it. I am not Brent.
Yeah.
So that's just the question I want to ask is when you go, I am happy, I am sad, I am hurt, I want money, I am hungry, whatever it is, any thought of the form, I am this or that, stop and ask, what is this I? What is this me? And that's called the path of self-inquiry. And some people have written it all the way to enlightenment. But notice it's inquiring as to the nature of the self. It's not psychological analysis. That's worth doing, but it's its own thing.
Yes.
It's saying, what is this me?
Yeah.
What exactly is that? And for the Eckhart Tolle fans,
yes,
that's exactly how he achieved his peak experience on the park bench.
Yeah.
It's right there in the book. It says, I sat on the bench and I asked myself, gee, what is this me that I think is Eckhart that has thoughts and feelings? What exactly is that? And you go,
yeah,
straight up to the bliss.
Okay. So
And he laid there in the bliss for about 6 weeks, eating out of dumpsters. And then he came out of it because he had to go write the book and share it with the world.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. So it's that same thing.
Yeah. So it's a contemplation. You're
Yes.
asked to contemplate.
Yes, I would say the third gen technology has 3 pieces to it.
Okay.
One is the meditation.
Okay.
One is the contemplation. The other is the movement.
Okay. All right.
And you notice that it's a very visceral and physical thing.
Okay.
As opposed to the second gen, which again is worth doing. It's good stuff.
Right. But
It's bound to language and words.
I understand that. And you're still fixing something, clearing something. There's something that's not right.
That's right.
And that in itself is a belief system that creates just that.
Exactly. It's just going to reinforce. As long as you think you need to be fixed because you're broken, what you're creating is being broken.
Right?
If you're trying to make money because you hate being poor, what you're creating is poverty.
Is poverty.
And it's unfortunate. We're all kind of trained to live ass backwards.
Well, yes, we are. We're conditioned to not know our power, not know who we truly are. It's been hidden.
And I just want to put out there that for I'm sure there's a lot of mothers listening to this.
Yeah.
That I honestly have found the greatest gift you can give to your children is your own awakening.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the most powerful, longest lasting gift you can give.
Yeah.
And I certainly haven't been a perfect father. Nobody is. I've tried, right?
hard.
But it's amazing watching my son. He got invited to my men's group. He's only 12. And he was saying a lot of the deepest and most profound things of anyone there.
There are teachers.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that was, I never tried to force him into any of my spirituality.
Yeah.
I simply focused on my own awakening and embodiment.
Yeah.
And trusted that he would learn from that, and he has.
Beautiful.
So for those that are motivated, that you got to know how you're motivated.
Yeah.
And I love what you said before we started. I'm not sure there's anybody on this planet more motivated than a parent who loves their child.
That's, yeah, they really
Right?
are the fuel.
You
Absolutely.
will walk through any hell carrying any burden.
Yeah.
As long as you have to.
And they show us the deepest parts of ourselves that we hide from ourselves. So we have, there are mirrors.
Yeah. So if you want your child to be better adjusted, to be more successful, more confident, make more money, don't tell them what to do. Show them an example.
See that.
That's how they really learn, right?
Absolutely.
Kids ignore most of what we tell them.
I know.
But they take right into their bodies and souls how we behave.
Yes.
That's why I say the greatest gift you can give to your children is your own awakening.
It's beautiful.
And be a great person, right?
Yeah.
Be confident.
Mm-hmm.
Love your life, be happy. And I totally get that's not easy for a lot of people. It's really hard for me.
Yeah.
I've been doing this full time for 20 years.
Yeah.
But yes, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go out of your comfort zone. It's going to be difficult. It's confusing. It's painful sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's what we're here for. We're here for the ride.
Yep, we are. And so for anyone that is interested in that approach, I'd love to get to know you better.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to come to at least my Healathon webinar.
Okay.
I'm going to talk a lot more about the different aspects of the work. I'm going to do some demonstrations as well as interactive processes.
Cool.
And the meditation is really cool. Many people, let's say 40%, start to see energy and auras with their open eyes for the first time. It's not everyone, but almost half the group usually gets it the first try.
Wow.
So if you've already had that ability, I'll crank it up for you.
That's amazing. Okay, so
if you haven't, there's a good chance I can turn it on. But again, I can't promise it happens the first time. Some people need 2, 3, 4, 5 exposures, maybe 10 if you're really a head case.
Yeah, yeah.
But I want to show this to you, allow you to experience it, and then decide, hey, is Brent the right teacher for me?
I love it. So it's online.
Yes.
It's on October 17th.
Yes, Tuesday evening.
What time is that?
We start at 5:30 Pacific time.
5:30 Pacific.
And that's 8:30 for those on the East Coast that aren't aware of other time zones.
Okay, yeah, good to know. So those darn time zones.
Well, I just learned when I lived on the East Coast, everyone assumes the whole world runs on East Coast time.
Yeah. That's funny.
The rest of the world isn't that way, but East Coasters, they're like, are there other time zones? Really? How stupid, right? Everyone conforms to East Coast time. Yeah. So there you go. And yeah, I'm going to talk a lot more about it, demonstrate it. Okay. And after the presentation, I'm going to do an open Q&A. Cool. And I'm going to do 2 healings for everybody. One is whatever you need healed. Okay. So show up, just let me know. I'm also going to show you how to do a radiation clearing to pull the harmful radiation out of your phone and your body. Okay. And I can't teach it to you in a short event. Okay. I have a weekend intensive where you can learn to do all these things. Okay. But one of the things, again, I'm not here to put fear in people. Just be aware that these cell phones and Wi-Fi's and all that are not good for our bodies. Right. And we need to mitigate the harm. Yes. That's all. It's like wearing a seatbelt. Yeah. Wearing a seatbelt doesn't prevent you from getting in an accident. But if you do, it reduces the damage. Okay. Okay. So it's a great way to reduce the damage living in the modern world is doing to your body. And this is really important for moms with small children. Yeah. Of course, they're much more sensitive to this than adults. Yeah, definitely. So I think it's doubly, triply important for moms to learn this. Because do you really want your kid growing up being fried by radiation? No, nobody. We already have enough problems with all the chemicals in our food and the environment and forever. Again, you guys know all about that, right? This is a simple, easy, pretty much essentially free way to mitigate the harm. Well, and I'd love to share it. I'm ready for magic, and anyone else that's listening, because not everyone's ready for it, Brent. That's one thing I've realized. Some people need to get their own evidence that the old way doesn't work. And you know what? That's okay too. Absolutely. I've blown up some very important relationships because I forced people down the path faster than they were ready.
Yeah, you have to be ready. And I am. And if you are too, then you're going to join me on October 17th, Tuesday
Yep.
night,
Yep.
5 p.m. Pacific Standard.
5:30 Pacific will start.
5:30. Well, and we'll make sure we'll put the link in the show notes so people can
Beautiful.
go there, sign it up. It's free, right?
Yeah, absolutely free. And just in case you're watching this in the future, I do them regularly. Just check out my website at awakeningdynamics.com.
Okay.
And you'll see right at the top, there's a big arrow with the date and time for the next healathon. Just click it and you're all set.
Okay. That's exciting. Oh, Brent, thank you.
It's been great to be here. I love sharing. And you know what? I love hippies.
Yay.
It's crazy. I grew up not liking hippies because my parents were really straight-laced. But one of my first teachers, she was a psychic grandma.
Oh,
and really? I thought, what does this young guy who's an engineer have in common? We became good friends. And she kind of opened my mind that, wow, this whole, hippie moms and grandmas are some of the coolest people around.
Well, we think so. So thank you.
Yeah. Now I can't stand the straight-laced people.
No, I know they're so boring.
Yeah. As they say, yeah.
Magic.
Once you've seen Paris, you don't want to go back to the farm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Brent, I will be there. I hope you hippie moms join me. And I'm really just grateful you're here. You're doing what you're meant to be doing. And, I just appreciate you also sharing your journey to show that, we just got to keep going. There's always going to be something on the other side.
Yes.
And we just got to keep going and follow the breadcrumbs because it
really is true. It's darkest before the dawn.
Yeah, truly.
No, it's no joke. I do not make it up. I met Carl the day after my bankruptcy.
It's really amazing.
Just crazy, right? And it was 11/22. No, I'm sorry, it was 11/11.
Wow.
I look back, again, it wasn't planned that way, but I met him on November 11th.
That's pretty cool.
Goes into numerology. 11/11 is the number of new beginnings and transformations. So I'll just offer to everyone watching, all the hippie moms, notice how often you're looking at the clock and it says 11/11.
A lot.
It's a lot more than one would expect statistically.
It's true.
Yep.
Wow.
So there we go.
It's magic. All right.
Yeah, it's magic.
All right, everyone. Well, I have the links for all the information to get in touch with Brent and to sign up for the webinar. And we can't wait to have you back, Brent. Thanks again for being here.
That'd be awesome. It's been great.
All right, everyone. We'll catch you on the next Hippie Moms podcast. Bye.